But first up, in Victoria.
Lockdown number 6.
Lockdown number 6.
In just 2 hours, Victoria will be plunged back into lockdown for a 6th time.
It is the state's 6th lockdown and will last for 7 days.
It's only been 9 days since the last lockdown eased, with restrictions still in place.
Bring it on, make it short and sharp. Gladys has cooked it.
Yes, thanks for your jibe there, random Victorian man. Look, we might only be on our 2nd lockdown here in Sydney, but I assure you it will be longer than all 6 of yours combined. We know how to make everything bigger and pricier here in Sydney. Don't I know it? Victorian Premier Dan Andrews was channeling his inner Eminem as he gave Victorians only one shot to eliminate COVID for the 6th time.
We only get one chance to act fast. We only get one chance to make difficult decisions that are the right decisions. I'd much prefer to wait 2 or 3 days.
So why don't you just wait 2 or 3 days like we did here in Sydney? That worked out well for us. Yes, as I record this, the cities of Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Newcastle are all in lockdown. Over 16 million people and half the population of Australia, leaving our Prime Minister Scott Morrison to offer this incredible piece of insight.
But for a lockdown to work, the lockdown has to work.
Yes, thanks, genius. Really nailing it there. That's why you pay your multiple media advisors the big bucks, I'm sure. With New South Wales case numbers still rising despite 6 weeks of lockdown, it's looking like we might just have to vaccinate our way out of this mess, leading the federal opposition to have this brainwave.
Labor has a new proposal and it's pretty simple. Cash for jabs.
A $300 one-off payment for all Australians who get fully vaccinated.
What? $300? Hell yeah! I'll get fully vaccinated several times a day for that kind of money. Hell, I wonder how much I can make out of this total.
I've got 1.6 million doses of AstraZeneca sitting at the moment that I can allocate immediately.
I'm gonna be a millionaire. I'll finally be able to afford to buy a house in Sydney. The only downside will be every time I drink water, it'll leak out of me like when a cartoon character lies on a bed of nails because I'll resemble a pincushion, but it'll be worth it. Of course, Scott Morrison and the federal government are totally opposed to this cash handout for the simple reason that Labor thought of it first.
I think the proposal that has been put forward by the Labor Party and Mr Albanese is a vote of no confidence in Australians. It says to them that their health concerns that they might have about a vaccine can be paid off.
Yes, Australians can't be paid off with cash, silly. You do it with car parks.
A $660 million park and ride program found to be no more than a pork barrelling exercise in must-win seats for the Liberal Party at the 2019 election. The hit list authored in the offices of Scott Morrison and Minister Tudge.
And what Australians are getting are more car parks. Australians are the winners. Thanks very much.
Surprisingly, young people are actually in favour of building these car parks on the offhand that one day they'll be able to live in them, which would actually make the commuter car park policy the closest thing the Coalition has ever done during their 8 years in office to tackle housing affordability for young people. Morrison also said this of Labor's Cash for Jabs plan.
This is a serious public health crisis. It's not a game show.
No, but wouldn't it be great to see Mel and Koshy on 7 Sunrise rebrand the cash cow as a vaccine cow and ring people up at home in the morning and threaten to stab them with a syringe? Now that's good television. Anyways, now on to the latest from the New South Wales
Delta Farce.
Okay, last week's episode, if you haven't heard it, was a huge deep dive into how New South Wales got to where we are, stuffing up the Delta outbreak after managing to keep COVID under control for the last 18 months. But I figured this week might be a good chance to touch in again with the Premier State and see how things are going. Okay, so last week on July the 28th, with New South Wales facing record case numbers every day, the New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian announced this would be the perfect time to announce bringing Year 12 back to school.
There's some certainty coming for HSC students. They can go back to class in 2 weeks, but they'll need to do regular rapid antigen testing. And those in Sydney's COVID hotspots will be given the Pfizer vaccine.
Our intention is that Year 12 learning recommence face-to-face on Monday the 16th of August, and we wanted to provide that certainty to the community.
To which everyone replied, "You what?"
The Teachers Federation, the Independent Education Union and Catholic school bosses, along with many students, believe it's not practical or safe.
1 in 4 of those infected are under 19. The health and safety of our students, their teachers and their families must come first.
And then this week, Gladys was like, psych, JK, lol.
Today, the Premier backtracked on the plan that was announced just last week.
Last week, Year 12s were told they'd be heading back to class mid-month. Today, the Premier changed her tune.
That was definitely our intention.
The Premier says there won't be a uniform approach for Year 12s. Instead, there'll be different rules for different schools in different suburbs.
Ah yes, different rules all over the place. And hasn't that worked well for New South Wales so far this outbreak? At the beginning, we had pubs open on one side of the street and closed on the other, and now we have different mask and stay-at-home rules within the same suburb. Good work, guys. Keep it up. And because the state government has failed to bring case numbers down, well, parents are bracing for potentially the worst news in years.
Still no confirmation whether younger students will go back to school this term or even this year.
The Chief Health Officer can't rule out the rest of the year being taught remotely.
How realistic is it that children are going back to school this year?
I think the key issue is how we go.
Yes, and if anyone out there is training to be a psychologist, perhaps brace yourself to hear a lot about this from your clients in 10 to 20 years. And then in the winter of 2021, mummy and daddy started drinking, like, a lot. So how did the Premier stuff up Year 12s returning so badly? Oh, that's right, she didn't even bother consulting the Education Minister.
Last week's decision was made by Crisis Cabinet without the Education Minister and was then announced without a finalised plan. Today's change in approach has now made that look like policy on the run.
Ugh, yes, consulting stakeholders is such a waste of time. Next year when you're doing the budget, keep the Treasurer out of it, I reckon. It'll make things a lot faster. It's a bit reminiscent of in mid-July when the New South Wales government decided to cut public transport back without even thinking about the people who caught public transport.
Most services were switched to Sunday timetables, but that left many essential workers with no public transport at all.
I sat at the bus stop for an hour. No bus.
To be fair, the New South Wales government was like, what? The public catches public transport? To get to work? How come I've never heard of this? And moving on, with many businesses shut in Sydney for over a month now, you'd think that the New South Wales government would be effortlessly trying to roll out business support payments. Wrong.
Business anger is growing over delays to lockdown support payments, with many saying they've had no response to their requests for help and no sign of any money.
The grants of up to $15,000 were meant to help businesses hit when the lockdown began in June. But now in August, many haven't seen a cent, and their calls for help are literally going unanswered.
Communications coach Marcus West says his calls to Service New South Wales have gone unanswered. Similarly for his clients and even his accountant.
He said that he's applied on behalf of 60 small businesses and only one of those has received any support to date.
We spoke to Jacinta from Anti-Age Me the day the increased support was announced last month.
I just want to work again.
She's still trying to apply for a grant.
Every time it has said that it can't be processed, but it's not actually telling me why it can't be processed.
Yes, 6 weeks into this lockdown and with no JobKeeper unlike last time, many business owners, including some friends of mine, are yet to receive any money from the government. But maybe they're just going about it wrong. The Premier says stop calling and just go on the website.
We were finding too many people were ringing Service New South Wales and that was taking a long time. So if people go to the website, they can get immediate assistance.
So that's what we did. Once on the newsouthwales.gov homepage, we clicked COVID-19 support package. That opened a screen with different options, including a link for the business grants. Again, we clicked that, which loaded up a brief overview and a link to apply for the grant. Once you followed that, though, it takes you back to Service New South Wales, where it suggests calling if you have trouble.
Yes, that's right. It's 2021 and the New South Wales state government doesn't even know the basics of how to build a Squarespace. Someone go out and buy these guys a GoDaddy voucher right now. Anyways, moving on, the New South Wales government obviously can't master the financial side of this outbreak, but at least our contact tracers still remain the gold standard and best in the world. Right?
Our contact tracers have gone from gold medalists to the chasing pack, thanks to the speed of the hyper-infectious Delta strain. We're hearing stories of people who've been to places where they could have caught the disease and weren't contacted for days.
Supermarkets and shopping centres have issued alerts for exposures before health authorities have notified the public, and some are even hearing of it first from online community groups. This person commenting 10 days late in frequency of reporting venues, wondering how many cases like this are around every single corner in Sydney. Another, I was there and checked in, I never got a message.
In regards to contact tracing, we are getting reports that some people are being alerted by New South Wales Health on what would be the last day of a 14-day isolation period. Why would that be happening? Why would there be those delays?
And there's no doubt, as the number of cases increase, so does that mean that resources are stretched further. But we have seen a huge boost in the number of people supporting our contact tracers. And can I please give a huge shout out to our contact tracers?
Yes, huge shout out to the people whose workloads were increasing exponentially with our own incompetence. Keep up the good work, guys, and please work harder and faster and longer. Thank you. Hey, and just between you and me, I can tell you the main reason the contact tracing in New South Wales is falling behind right now, and it's pretty obviously simple. It's because the New South Wales government is letting there be too many cases. And there's too many cases because too many people are still allowed to go to work, and there's too many shops open. And now here's the Premier thoughtfully and carefully addressing those concerns from journalists.
Why is Bunnings open? It's not open in Queensland.
Next question.
Why is Bunnings open?
Oh, well, at least our first-class medical system is still holding up despite the rising case numbers. Right?
Chris, you have breaking news on big delays at Westmead Hospital.
Peter, 2 COVID-positive patients have been stuck in ambulances outside Westmead Hospital today. The wait is unbelievable. One had to wait 7 hours, the other 4 hours, because the volume of patients in the hospital meant the 2 people could not be admitted.
While unions say doctors and nurses are stretched to the limit, dozens of staff at Westmead forced into isolation after a colleague worked 3 shifts while infectious.
And if you're wondering why the New South Wales government, unlike other states, is keeping Bunnings open, letting supermarkets stay open late, keeping roads out of Sydney open, and letting workplaces have as many workers on site as they want, all while the contact tracing and medical systems appear to be on the verge of collapse, well, it's because freedom, baby.
Our aim is to keep people as safe as possible and living as freely as possible. We're keen to ensure we provide as much freedom as possible whilst living safely. And also as free as possible.
Yeah, love that freedom, baby. Looking forward to 6 to 12 months from now when a member of the media pack at the 11 a.m. press conferences like, Premier, thanks to the vaccine-resistant Omega variant, we're up to 200,000 cases a day, and literally everyone is dead except for you and me standing here right now. Perhaps, do you think maybe now is a good time to consider closing the Bunnings? And even then, Gladys would be like...
Next question.
And in summary, I think Scott Morrison said it best when he said,
"For a lockdown to work, the lockdown has to work."
News Fighters, Australia's funniest news summary podcast.